Alright guys, Mike from Boyer Bows again. I'm going to show you basically the tools that I use to do these bows. Now I showed you in the last video the board that I was using. I have cut that out. Okay. I've cut the board out. It really lousy cut, by the way. Was trying to stay. I made my line 1.5 inches wide, 66 inches long, and then the natural thickness of the wood, which is supposed to be 1 inch but is actually usually 3/4 of an inch. And then when I cut it, I wanted to stay on the outside of the line so I could sand it down and taper it in. Unfortunately, as you will see, I don't want to say the saw slipped, I just screwed up. But I think it'll still be okay. Obviously I see where I'm going to be tapering this piece of wood from. So I'm going to end up now, because of this mistake though, I'm probably going to end up with something even thinner. But I'm going to try to salvage it and make it work. But in the meantime, let's go over some of the tools. If I have to cut another piece to get this thing started with you guys, I will. But for now, let's just go over the tools. I cut it out with a jigsaw, which is why it's got these problems. If you have a table saw, a band saw, or just a way of doing a really straight cut, or you're really good with a jigsaw, because obviously I'm not, try to get as straight a, make your big cuts with as straight a tool as you can. You can always come back and sand. If you don't have that, and you don't make this kind of mistake, and you stay on the outside of your line, you can always sand down or scrape down to that line and get a nice straight or relatively straight edge afterward. But if you go beyond the line, you can't add the wood back again. So I'm stuck with this now, and I gotta live with it, or cut another piece of wood. I'm gonna try to live with it. I mean, if you really look, it's not that far gone, but I am going to end up with potentially a weaker bow than you guys will if you can stick to the dimensions. Remember, 66 inches long, 1.5 inches wide, and then the natural thickness of the board is 3/4 of an inch. Okay, then I have my heavy duty rasp. This is the one I like. We already talked about this in a different bow build. Very heavy, coarse teeth on this end, medium teeth on this end. I have a 4-way rasp that I like to use for the fine stuff, because this coarse isn't really all that coarse, at least on mine. It's more like a medium coarseness, maybe a little bit better than medium. And then this is a very almost fine coarseness, rounded, rounded, flat, and flat. 4-way rasp. This is something I cannot live without happily. I can live without it, but not happily. This is my sanding block. You can see who makes it. This is a hard block. It's got little teeth in here that hold your sandpaper down. Now this sandpaper is for a belt sander. This is not regular sandpaper. The reason I like this stuff is it holds its coarseness. It doesn't deteriorate nearly as fast as regular sandpapers do, and they fit in the sanding blocks just so beautifully. This is 50 grit. Now remember, when you're talking about grit of sandpaper, the lower the number, the more coarse it's going to be. So 50 grit is a lot rougher than 100 grit, which is a lot rougher than 220 grit, which is a lot rougher than 4,000 grit, and so on. Okay? For what we're doing now, try to get the lowest number you can find. I have seen as low as 40, but nothing lower than that. At the moment, I'm using 50 because that is currently the lowest number I can find. This is for shaping. This is for doing hand fine sanding that you don't want to hit with the rasp again. You don't want to remove quite that much wood. There's one other tool I use, and it's called a scraper. It's basically a one-handed paint scraper. Let me see if I can find one in here real quick. Yeah, here's one. Forgot to set this out. This is a one-handed paint scraper. I don't recommend this one, but you guys can find one. And basically you come here and you're going to scrape wood, and that takes off a nice amount of wood all at one time, more than a sander will do, but less than a rasp will do. So you've kind of got these different levels of removing wood, from rasp to scraper, to sander, to finer sandpapers. We're going to put a riser on this bow, so I cut an extra piece of the hickory off. So the riser is the handle, for those of you know, it's going to be there. I'm going to be a little decorative and fancy. I have a piece of bocati. I'm going to put that on top, or you can just use that, or cut two pieces of it, stack them on top. That's a piece of Purple Heart. What I am going to do, honestly, is put Purple Heart, which is a 3/4, and then bocati on top of that. Now that's fancy schmancy, guys. I'm going to get that kind of color decoration. You don't have to do that. You can just take the pieces of the board that you have left over, save some money, stack them up, maybe two of them. And two is a lot. It's a lot of wood to go through. But I'm actually just going to go with the 1.5 pieces, because I split this not quite in half. I did this a long time ago. I don't even know what these dimensions are, but I figured this is enough for me to make the riser with. One may not be enough. So if you don't have, if you're making a heavy bow, we're going to cut a shelf into this. It's pretty deep. So I would, if it's a light bow, let's say 40 pounds or less, one piece will be enough. If you're doing over 40 pounds or hope to, then you're going to need at least 2 pieces, and then I'll show you what to do with that when the time comes. And at that point, now you have all your tools, you have all your supplies. Don't throw away your pieces of wood. We may be doing some tip overlays as well. This is a pen blank I got at Woodworker's Emporium for 50 cents. But you can just cut a piece of hickory too and just stack that on top of here as well, and you got yourself I would actually take this piece, cut it down the middle vertically, and you're going to have a tip overlay. But we'll show you all that. Just make sure you have some extra pieces laying around. So just a quick recap. Jigsaw to cut out your the working piece of wood. You're going to need a couple of rasps, some heavy duty ones and some not so heavy duty ones. You're going to need a scraper. This is also a very important tool when it comes time to tiller. So make sure you get a scraper. Doesn't really matter what kind, as long as you're happy with it. And then you're going to need a sanding block and sandpaper. And eventually you're going to need some, you get as coarse as you can for now, but eventually you're going to need some light stuff. But we'll talk about that. You're also going to need, if you're going to put a riser on your bow, and we are, you're going to need some extra scrap wood to make a riser in the same width. Oh, I should probably say, this is 7 inches long. 7 inches long, and this the 1.5 inches wide, so it fits right on top of there perfectly. If you are going to make a mistake, let this piece be a little wider than your bow, or what will be your bow, because you can always take it in, but you can't add wood again later, or at least it's very difficult to. And you may want to get another piece down the road. Only need one for a tip overlay if we do that. I'm not sure we're doing that or not, but we'll see. All right. Guys, get this stuff together. We'll start putting the first actual build. We'll take some measurements, make some big cuts on our next one, and we'll see you then. I'm Mike from Boyer Bows. American Longbow. More supplies. See you soon.